Hi guys, Lindsay here with Storybook Family Farm. So this evening it's actually a little bit shady in the garden, a little ahead of schedule, which is really nice so that way I can give you guys a bit of a garden tour, but I also do need to harvest some things in here. So I figured I'd bring you guys along so you could see how things are going, how things are growing, how things are turning out. And just basically so that way you guys can see a little bit of how I do things. So as a full disclosure, my garden is full of weeds, as is most people's gardens around this time of year. Things are really taking off. Things are going kind of berserk, kind of crazy, and apparently the weeds also really enjoy the fact that we use a lot of rabbit manure and goat manure on the garden. So behind me here, you will see the tomatoes are getting very tall. They've gone past the 4-foot tall fence there already, and I do have several ripe little cherry tomatoes to pick. So these ones here are a orange colored tomato. They're really delicious, and they are split because it rained, and I did not get these picked before it rained. So turkeys, they get the split tomatoes because of the fact that they will not stay good on the counter for more than just like a day or so, and I do not have time tomorrow because of doing the farmer's market to preserve or do anything with the harvest that I'm getting today. So things like the tomatoes that are split, they kind of just get fed right back to the animals because I don't have time to mess with them. But so as you guys can see on the plants behind me here, there are several different tomatoes that are ripe. None of our, well, to my knowledge, I didn't check today, but as of a couple days ago, none of our larger tomatoes have turned colors yet, which is kind of a bit unusual because normally by now, the geese have got to have their word in. Normally by now we would have gotten a few ripe big tomatoes, but we have not yet. So we have several smaller tomatoes that are still green, but we have not gotten hardly any ripe tomatoes yet, except for cherry tomatoes. And then, that looks like one. Oh, this one's just starting. I'll flip you guys around. So we got this one here that is just starting to ripen, but it's clearly still very much an orange color. And then there's a hidden one down in here. So then turkeys are standing there like just waiting, the babies are. They're like, come on, give me a treat, give me a snack. So one thing that we did this year that was a little bit different than what we've done in previous years with the garden is in front of the tomato plants, we planted some radishes and also some carrots in here. So the carrots are, obviously they're coming up. There's one right here in my hand, the little leaf of it. But I don't think I'm ever going to grow like this again because of the fact that it just makes it so messy in here. Like, this is the walkway. Okay, so this area over in here, this is a grassy walkway here that we then mow, and we harvest the grass clippings to then feed to the goats and feed to the rabbits. It makes it almost impossible to try to mow in here because of these right here. These are the radishes that have gone to seed, which these little things right here, the little shells that have the seeds inside of them, the little pods there, they are edible and they actually taste pretty good. However, everything keeps falling over into the walkway here, making it extremely difficult to try to mow. It also, as you can see, makes it extremely difficult to find the tomato plants. Except for that little cutie right there. That one is really good at finding tomatoes as they ripen. So basically what I've decided this year is that I don't want to super duper jam pack the garden again, even though that's kind of in previous years the only way that we could do this thing was to just jam pack every square inch that we had. I don't think I want to keep doing that because this is just, it's so difficult to mow in this area, to take care of things in this area and stuff. Like, I actually have to have Tracy come out and like hold radishes up so that way I can mow the walkway. So it's become a 2-person job, something that was designed to be simple and easy for us to maintain as just one person doing it has become very difficult as a 1-person job. So definitely not going to do that again, and I don't recommend it again. So the radishes, though, they have done well. The carrots is too soon to tell for them, but the leaves are doing good. So there's hope that the roots are doing something underneath the ground. So over in here we have our okra, which is starting to produce, which I think that okra is a really neat vegetable, how it grows. So right here, this one here is like ready to pick. I don't see any active flowers. I would show you guys the flowers if I seen any active ones because they're really quite pretty. But so we have this one ready to pick. We have several others that are getting close to picking time, so that's really exciting for me. I think I'm actually just going to keep you guys in this view so that way you can just sort of see the garden as I see it. So over in here is our sweet peppers, which when it started getting really warm, all of the peppers pretty much were put on pause. So it was kind of interesting, but a bit disappointing that right after we planted them, we had a good harvest, and now there's pretty much nothing. So this little guy here is ready for me to pick, and then I have some other ones over in here. Well, that one just fell off. I'll stick that in my pocket. So our beans are doing well. The bush beans here, and then the bush beans over in here, along with tons of grass, as you can see on this plot here. They are actually doing quite well. They are slowing down a little bit because bush beans are pretty much something that really goes crazy when it first starts growing, and then it just pretty much slows down to a grinding halt. And when they start slowing down to a grinding halt, that's usually when the pole beans, which I have planted pole beans right here along this fence here, when the bush beans start slowing down, that's actually when the pole beans start really getting into good production. So as you can see, here is a bean with some bug damage on, which not a big deal. You just cut that piece off. A lot of people, they try to make it seem like you have to be growing grocery store quality produce that looks aesthetically pleasing, is perfectly straight, but that's not actually how nature grows things. So crooked beans like that, those would never be sold in stores as a raw bean for people to do. But in a home garden situation, crooked beans are perfectly fine. They all eat the same. They all taste good. There's a duck in the background getting forcibly bred, so we definitely have too many drakes for hen ratio, but that'll get rectified here soon. So, and then our hot peppers over in here, they are doing really well. They also got themselves put on pause a little bit, and eventually they just sort of started regenerating again. So I would guesstimate that these plants here, these are the chili poblanos that we have. They are every bit of 3 foot tall. They come up to about my belly button. So they're a good tall plant, which, as you can see, there is blossom there, some peppers there, but they're definitely way too small to pick yet. So our kale is doing really well. There is some bug damage to it, which, isn't a big deal. You just wash it off really good and make sure that you're not eating, caterpillars or things of that nature, but not a big deal. I think that it kind of bothers me. It's a bit of a shame to me that a lot of homesteading YouTubers and things of that nature and gardening YouTubers, they don't show that naturally things have pests, things are ugly, things aren't perfect. We live in such a culture that kind of just convinces everybody that they should just show their best selves all the time, that it is very discouraging to people like me that are not perfect. I think most humans are not perfect. And things go catastrophically wrong, especially in just the second year of having a garden. There's no way to start a garden from scratch and then have it be completely pest-free, weed-free, and absolutely perfect. It's not feasible, especially if you're raising livestock, if you're doing a bunch of million other things and stuff like I am. It's not possible to make sure everything is perfect and stuff. Maybe in 5 years, everything in my garden will look perfect and look a lot nicer and tidier and neater and have less bug pressure. But, that's kind of the beauty of nature and growing things, is that eventually things get better, things get easier. But this is only the second year of us growing anything here. So, things are still kind of difficult, still in the struggle, but, still producing food. So I'm going to flip you guys back around. So over in here, we have all of our massive amounts. Hello, geese. Over in here, we have our massive amounts of summer squash and zucchinis. So these things have been really cranking it out and have been doing really, really well. So as you could tell in that, I'll walk past the geese so that way you guys can hear me. As you could tell in that first area back there, the squashes were doing a lot better than what they are down further. The reason for that is up in that area over there, that is right by where we had the rabbits. These geese are just following me. Walking away, walking away. Geese are really neat animals. They're really fun to watch and observe, but when they think that they found something suspicious, they can be really, really incredibly annoying. But they are good at guarding the property and making sure that nothing gets eaten. But yeah, kind of annoying creatures to have around. Anyways, I'll squat down so that way they can't see me as easily. Don't get geese if you want animals that you don't have to hide from. Goats you also kind of have to hide from too. But anyways, so the reason that the squash and the zucchini that are up in the front area of the garden there look so much bigger and more robust than what is down further in the garden is because of the fact that what was up that way was actually right where we had the rabbits in the wintertime. We set their rabbit tractors up on cinder blocks so that way their manure and stuff could just basically collect in that area, and that is slightly uphill from the rest of the garden. So every time that it rained, all that big pile of manure was washing nutrients right back down into the garden. So that is why that particular spot, the squash plants and the zucchini are just basically like going bananas, which is fantastic because it's making it so that way we have a bunch to preserve, which also reminds me that I have a lot more zucchinis and stuff to cut up to preserve. But you know, it is what it is. A day at a time, a minute at a time, a task at a time, I suppose. The geese are still watching me. So over in here, we have a volunteer sunflower that has gotten so big that it fell over. We have another one that's also done the same. The ones that are really super droopy looking, those have all been fully pollinated and are going to seed. That's why they look so sad and pathetic, because they don't want to attract more pollinators because all of the pollen is gone. So we have some, this here is actually a volunteer. I think that this is like a pink Hubbard squash volunteer. It came up on its own accord, and that's just what it looks like. It's kind of like a pink Hubbard, but it could also be some sort of hybridization. So along each of these fence posts here, there's a trellis and stuff. Along these trellises, there is several different types of winter squashes growing, but it is very hard to pick it up on camera. But yeah, this one here is quite large, as you can see with my massive hand on it, that I can't even pick it up with just one hand. So I mean, it's definitely a volunteer that is worth keeping in the garden. Plus this amaranth here is really, really pretty. I don't know if that's actually a one that we sowed wildflower seeds for or not, but it's pretty, so I left it. And then we have a spaghetti squash over there, one lonely spaghetti squash that is growing. This year gardening has been quite a bit of a challenge because of, in the beginning of the garden season, it was way too wet for us to plant anything, so we were about 3 to 4 weeks behind where we would have liked to be. And then shortly after we planted it, we entered into a very big drought period. So it's definitely been a struggle, especially because this land was abandoned for so long that all the pests and everything are really out of control, really out of balance. But you know, it is what it is. We're still getting food to preserve, food to harvest and stuff. So I mean, it's definitely still a win. Weedy gardens still produce food. But so I want to show you guys one of my favorite squashes that we have growing, just because it's producing like mad and it's really, really delightful. So this here is called a round zucchini. So they actually, I've also seen them labeled as 8-ball zucchini. So it is a good size zucchini, but it stays round, which I will have to pick that here in a minute. You geese are seriously ridiculous. It's like filming with a toddler, I suppose. They just want to scream and get their 5 seconds of fame in. But the round zucchini are a hybrid that we started growing a couple years ago when we still lived in town. And we had only 2 plants when we lived in town the first year that we grew them. And I would guess that each plant probably produced at least 20 pounds of zucchini, which is really impressive. And it also tastes really good. It's really good for preserving in the freezer, which how we preserve the squash is we actually just dice it up and then put it in the sandwich bags and then freeze it that way. I have made squash pickles in the past, but as a family, we don't eat very many pickled things. So I kind of stopped preserving things in that way. We do like pickled eggs. That is something that we do preserve. To make it so we have good snacks whenever we're, kind of have a hankering for something and we don't feel like taking the time to cook anything. But in terms of pickling vegetables, we just don't eat pickles very much, so it's not really worth it for us to do that. But Tracy and I, we actually really thoroughly enjoy eating the squash just as like a sauteed thing. And then once I basically fill up as many bags as I think we're going to need for throughout the, wintertime season and the spring and then the fall of the diced up squash, because we like to saute it, then I will switch to shredding all of the squash and zucchinis up. So then that way, it's kind of like how hash browns, like the shoestring hash browns are done. That's how I like to shred them. And then that way I can use it to make quiches or use it to make things that I call garden cakes, which is basically kind of like a crab cake, but it's just with zucchini instead, and some Old Bay and garlic powder and some salt and pepper and a little bit of egg in there too to help bind it together. But that's how we like to preserve the squashes. And then along the fence where the squashes are, I really can't show you guys now because if I stand up, the geese are going to find me. They are literally standing on the, I'll flip you over. All right, so where that garden gate is, right over there, the geese are standing on the other side of it. So if I stand up, then they are going to find me. Which I don't think you guys are going to be able to see their heads right next to that chair there, but it is what it is. So along the garden fence here, there is pole beans growing up along there, and they have just started producing in mass quantities. So far this year, I have been able to produce or preserve, I think it's been 12 quarts so far, equivalent to 12 quarts, which is not where I would like to be at this point in the year, but it's better than last year, because last year we had 0 quarts that we were able to preserve. And the year before that we did 5 quarts. So in the year before that was 75. So clearly you guys can see where I'm trying to get back to, but first year gardens are they're rough. This is why when people in like prepper groups and things of that nature, they talk about, oh, well, I got a seed bank, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like, first year garden sucks. Second year garden, it's better than the first, but third year gardens, that's really where it's at. So if you're new to gardening, just keep hanging in there because eventually it'll get better and stuff. Unless if you have a lot of pixie dust, because then, you can make first year garden become third year garden pretty quickly, but it is what it is. Basically too, with all of our brassicas that are not the kale that's, up this way more that I can't show you because of the geese, they are really, really, really riddled with bugs. So we have not gotten to harvest any kohlrabies yet. Our cabbages are starting to head up some, but they look like Swiss cheese. So I don't know how that's going to pan out. I've only ever grown cabbage once before, and that was in our third year garden when we still lived in town. And they turned out really good. They were very small, they were buggy, but they still tasted really good. So hopefully later on this year, maybe next year, we'll get good at growing different things. But as it is this year, we're getting the basics covered of getting some tomatoes to put up to make more sauce. And then also getting a bunch of beans put up so that way we have beans to last us, because that is our family's favorite vegetable. And then our second favorite to eat on a regular basis is actually like zucchinis and summer squashes, to have them sauteed up in a frying pan. So clearly that's what the big emphasis has been put on this year, because of the fact that that's what we grew the most of. That's what we really hyper intensively focused on to try to grow a lot of, is just then that way we can have it, that we have all of our favorites basically on hand at all times. So that's kind of our goal as homesteaders, is to make it so that way we can have all the foods that we really enjoy always available. So then that way we never have to stop craving things and waiting and waiting and waiting, so that way we can eat them again. So anyways, that's it for me today. I have got to get the things harvested that I need to, and if I go to try to do that while on camera, the geese are going to go crazy. So I'm kind of trapped in this back corner of the garden here. So hopefully things will just keep growing and producing things, and hopefully we get some rain soon, because this drought has been really, really intense for way too long. It's been too dry. So anyways, thanks for watching. Have a good one, guys.